The Shift Network presents Mass Incarceration Has a Face.
This is the story of Wayne L. Jones, the son of Danny Jones and Betty J. Jenkins. He is currently imprisoned at Hancock State Prison. Wayne has been held captive in prison for 23 years. He is the youngest of 3 children and was raised by a single mom who worked hard to care for him and his siblings. At a young age, Wayne started hanging out with adults, which led to a reckless lifestyle that he is not proud of. He obtained his barber's license in 1996, hoping to start his own business, but being in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people and not having proper legal representation changed everything for him. Wayne was uneducated about the courts and did not understand what taking a plea would mean for him. He could not file an appeal because he was never provided a copy of his transcripts. The courts informed his mother that they couldn't locate Wayne's transcripts. In addition, the courts indicated that they have been unable to locate the court reporter who was allegedly not a licensed transcriber. Wayne's transcripts were needed to file an appeal. Wayne Jones did not take a person's life, yet he is serving life in prison with the possibility of parole. Yet the parole board has continued to send him a notice that states, "No, serve more time." However, if the penal system was established to rehabilitate Wayne Jones, shouldn't 23 years of imprisonment be enough? Wayne Lamar Jones wants the system to remember that he is human.
Hello, welcome to Mass Incarceration Has a Face. I am Anala D., your host. Women Woke Within, a social justice coalition, is pleased to bring you the story of Wayne Lamar Jones. But before we get started, I want to share what a spokesperson for the Family Unification Network, who is mounting this movement, said about their reason for connecting to this cause. And I will quote, "The mass incarceration has a face movement exists because mass incarceration has been a challenge in the United States for too long, but not to worry, for it will be resolved through this movement. Mentally, we have all supported the concept of mass incarceration, which has caused and allowed its existence. But now, Women Woke Within intends to squash the life out of mass incarceration, even as the solution to this question is sought. And the question being asked is simply this: when is an incarcerated person rehabilitated? And who is qualified to say so?" End quote. For more information regarding this movement, visit FamilyUnificationNetwork.org or WomenWokeWithin.com, because when we connect, we move mountains. Now, with that being said, let's make one thing clear, ladies, that we are those mountain movers. So now we're going to go right to Miss Joanne Cash Owens, who will introduce herself. Then we will have Miss Michelle Jones introduce herself. Miss Kashina Sanders Woods will introduce herself. And then, of course, Jayla Young will introduce herself. She is our law student that is with us today. And then, of course, I will introduce Miss Betty Jenkins, the mother of Wayne Jones, who is a member of Women Woke Within. And she is here today to talk about her son. So we will start with Miss Joanne Cash Owens.
Well, good evening. I'm just honored to have this opportunity. I am Joanne Cash Owens. I am founder and executive director of Family Unification Network, Incorporated, which is a 30-year-old nonprofit ministry, as well as I'm also president of BWC, Because We Care Global Television Channel.
Moving right on to Miss Michelle Jones.
Yes, my name is Michelle Jones, and I am a member of the Women Woke Within organization. I am the paralegal with over 5 years of experience, and most of that experience comes in the criminal law. I enjoy conducting legal research and preparing cases.
I am Kashina Sanders. I am part of the Women Work Within. I'm also with the Kids Network on D-Shift Network. And that's about it.
I am Jayla Young. I am the social media director for D-Shift Network.
Okay, and Jayla's also a law student that is with us today. She didn't say that, but she is that. And I'm going to introduce, as I mentioned, Miss Betty Jenkins, the mother of Wayne Jones. I met Betty Jenkins a couple years ago, I believe it was, and she called me to discuss what could be done about her son Wayne. And she was going through so much trying to get justice for her son. Betty Jenkins is one of the parents of hundreds of thousands of parents who has not given up on having their loved one released from prison. And I salute Betty Jenkins today because she continues to fight and working to get her son justice from being in that prison system. But before we get started, Ms. Jenkins, one of the things I like to do is I would like for you to introduce your family to our audience. I want to share a photograph that we saw in the previous video, and you are going to, for us, identify the faces in the video. In addition, I want you to share any information that we didn't cover in the narrative, in the video narrative that covered your son. So you can share with us anything else that you'd like to share. So just give me a moment while we bring up that photo, and you can share any information that you want to share. Okay, Miss Jenkins, share with the audience, identify the faces in the photo, tell us who they are, tell us about everything you want us to know about those in the photograph.
Okay, we can start over to the left side of the screen here. That is my family portrait of when Wayne was a small boy. He was younger. And my second husband, not Wayne's father. That's my second husband. He was in the military. So we travel around a lot with this family here, this husband here. And of course, there's Wayne when he was, I think when he was incarcerated, I don't remember which prison, but the one with the black shirt on, that's him. He came home, went to Georgia for his father's homegoing. His father passed in May 2019. And I took that picture and, kind of cropped it, so he didn't have on his prison uniform because he didn't have that on at the funeral. But his father, Danny Jones, passed. His biological father passed in 2019.
Okay. Well, Barry, let's step back just for a second and identify the people in the family photo for us. Which one of those those young men in the picture? I know I can see the grown man, which is your husband. That's
Uh-huh.
you. Which one is
Yeah.
Mr. Jones in the photograph?
Wayne is the behind my husband. That's the baby. He's the baby of the family.
Oh, okay. So that's the baby back there with that big old smile.
Yeah, with a smile. That's what I'm used to. He was always smiling, but since he's been incarcerated, that smile he doesn't smile anymore.
No,
And then that's my daughter Tammy, and
okay.
then her brother and Wayne's brother Blake.
Okay, so that's that. Okay, good. So that's your family. And so, is there
That's
anything else you want to tell us about what maybe perhaps things that we didn't cover in the
it,
narrative? We were talking about Wayne. At when he was this age right here, what did he like to do and all of that stuff? Tell us about him.
Wayne was happy-go-lucky, just like he's smiling now. He was always smiling, and he was the clown of the family.
Okay. So
Always mimicking someone. He liked to dance, a long time ago, to break dancing. This picture right here, we traveled to California and Texas as a family, because that's where my then husband was stationed. And Wayne danced a lot, the break dance in Georgia before he went to California. But when he got there, he didn't do too much break dancing because they were out dancing him. And he didn't like that. It was too much competition.
oh, I see.
Um,
That's a
but that
wonderful.
was that was a happy family there.
I can
That was a happy situation right there
I can see.
when
And
when all of us.
how old was Wayne in this picture? Do you remember how old he was in this?
Um, I can't remember, but I want to say that he was probably about, I don't know, about 12, 13, something like that. Look, 12, yeah, about 11 or 12. I can't remember.
Oh, that's okay that you can't remember. I just think it's a wonderful picture, and it seems like you guys were having a wonderful experience during that time.
Had a
Now,
wonderful life then.
absolutely, you indicated that Wayne was first incarcerated in 2001. At that time, what was Wayne's age when he was first incarcerated? And then
Um, no, no, Wayne was first incarcerated in 1991.
1991. And so, how old was
91.
he at
And
the
he
time?
was what, 17, 18,
Wow. Wow. Now, how long was he incarcerated at that time?
10 years.
10 years. So now
Yeah.
think about this. And I think and let us think about this. And I want to put this out there for our audience to understand. 17, Wayne Jones was incarcerated at the age 17. Now, Ms. Jenkins, do you think that being incarcerated at such an early age helped to rehabilitate Wayne, or did it make things worse in your mind for him? And please explain this to us.
I think it made things worse, um, due to the fact that I didn't know until later that he was on drugs. He was on drugs. And whenever he couldn't go back to school in Evans County, Georgia, because of an incident that happened, he felt shame.
Uh,
So that's when I moved to Savannah. And I think that's when the drugs became more prominent. Then, I mean, I never saw anything around the house or anything because I was working at night at the post office,
mhm.
so didn't notice all this until later. And my daughter brought it to my attention. There's something going on. I said, well, no wonder, he's so happy-go-lucky all the time.
Mm.
He was on drugs.
Wow. And at that young age, it's no telling, especially with you having a working parent working at night and everything is just so a lot of that contributed to him. And I know that you said that he liked to, even in the narrative, he hung around older people, which
Yes.
probably didn't help at all either. So let me,
Yeah,
we understand, and you told us in your, in when I told our researcher that Wayne was charged with kidnapping in 2002, and you told us
yes,
that you told this to our legal assistants. Now you told us that the judge, and I think the judge's name is Judge Johnson or someone like that, right? Judge Johnson.
right.
Okay, you indicated that the evidence that he said, allegedly said, that the evidence in Wayne's case did not support a kidnapping charge. Explain why you think the judge said that.
Well, it was because one of the witness made a statement, and from my understanding, Wayne said that he asked the lady that was behind the counter at the Pizza Hut in Columbus, Georgia, to turn around and move to the back, move a few steps,
Mm-hmm.
and just a few steps. He didn't put his hand on her. They didn't see a gun, and I asked him, "What did you have?" Well, they didn't see a gun or a knife. Whatever. He said it was an old cell phone he had in there in his pants pocket.
Mm.
And I said to him, well, why did they charge you kidnapping? Because kidnapping, I was thinking, maybe a child or something, but no. Said something about the law back then. If you ask them to move a few feet, whatever, that's considered kidnapping.
Wow.
But he just asked her to turn around and go to the back. She was behind the counter, and he
Mm-hmm.
told her to turn around and step to the back.
So they consider that as kidnapping, as
Yes,
a kidnapping charge. Um, uh,
yes,
let's let our legal assistant kind of dive into that a little bit and tell us about that kidnapping charge. And because I was kind of reading up on kidnapping, and it says that a standard kidnapping charge under Code 16.5-40 is a minimum of 10 years, a max of 20, unless there's a minor child involved. And it didn't sound like this was a minor child, since this person was working in Pizza
Pizza
Hut.
Hut.
But yet he has been incarcerated for 23 years. So maybe
Yes.
our Michelle Jones, our legal assistant, can shed a little light on this.
Okay, thank you. Well, according to the Georgia Law Code 16.5-40, a person commits the offense of kidnapping when such a person abducts or steals someone away without their permission. Although, the situation that Ms. Jenkins described doesn't seem like it fits that law code.
Right.
It just, depend on what other facts that was listed in the indictment that made this particular charge kidnapping charge.
And
So
now none of us are attorneys on here.
Right.
We are not attorneys. We are just looking at what the law says and what the rules say. Okay.
Right.
Go
No,
on.
we're not attorneys. Thank you.
Okay, you have anything else you want to say about that, Ms. Jones?
No, it's just that based off what Ms. Jenkins has described, it doesn't fit the law code. And this is the law code that's coming from the Georgia Justice website.
Got you.
And again, that law code is 16-5-40.
Absolutely. And another thing that I read, and when I was looking at this, it says if the victim was never moved, the charges could be dropped or reduced to holding someone against their will. So perhaps, Ms. Jenkins, that's perhaps why the judge says it didn't meet the mark. It didn't make the mark of being a kidnapping charge. I don't.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So let's just move on, because we do have a lot of stuff to cover. Ms. Jones, did you have a case number that you could tell the audience, just in case someone else wants to take a look at this? Ms. Jones, what's that case number for that you in your research that you found?
The case number that I have for the kidnapping charge That case number is 2002-CR-0379.
Okay, so that is the case number, and we're doing this for our audience because I know that there are people out there that will want to look into this case. Now, Miss Jenkins, well, before I move on, I just want to ask our law student, Miss Jayla Young, is there anything you want to add about this kidnapping charge and the code or anything like that, Miss Young?
No, I think you guys hit it on the nail.
Okay, great. Now that's for my law student there. So Miss Jenkins, in Wayne's story, it was alleged that you have never been able to obtain his transcripts. When I heard that, I was just taken back. I just couldn't believe it. So talk to the audience about this. Why couldn't you get his transcripts?
I have been trying for years and years and years. You know, it got to the point where a few years I just stopped trying to call the Muskogee County Courthouse, but they couldn't find one because they couldn't find a court reporter that did the transcribing, number one.
Wait. And I remember, I think I remember hearing that in the narrative. So what you're saying is, number one, they couldn't provide you the transcripts because they couldn't find the court reporter who transcribed his case in the court.
Exactly. And I was told that from by more than 2 or 3 people at the Muskogee County Courthouse. And it wasn't until, I guess they got tired of me calling, it wasn't until April 20th, 2021, they sent me a letter from clerk of Superior Court in Columbus, Georgia. And it says, upon diligently searching the information database of the Muskogee County Superior State Court reporter based off the information that you provided, no guilty plea or sentencing transcript was located. Defendant name Wayne L. Jones, got his birthday and arrest date 8/30/2002. Well, I in turn called the court again. And they said if I find it, to let them know, because they were looking for her for several other cases that didn't have transcripts.
And I know this is in writing, and I know this is the truth because Ms. Jenkins sent me a copy of the same letter that she just read to our audience, meaning that she was never able to obtain the transcripts. And now this, and I'm laughing about this because now they're telling Ms. Jenkins, well, if you find the court reporter, you let us know because we can't find them either. Yet, Mr. Jones remains incarcerated. Now, something about this just don't seem right to me. How about, tell me what your experience was, or anybody else on here that had any experience with trying to get their transcripts. Tell me about yours, and then I'll tell you about me. Ms. Jones or Ms.
Okay, yeah. I'll tell you about my experience. When I requested my transcripts from the courts, I did not receive all of the transcripts. I did have to contact the Court Reporters Association to locate the court reporter who then transcribed those transcripts, and I was able to get them from the courts.
So you still had to go through something to get those, and it should have been automatic, shouldn't it? You
right. For that particular hearing. Excuse me for cutting you off. Yeah, it should have been put, and she should have transcribed those transcripts and put them and filed them within the courts.
Got you. How about you, Miss?
Can I jump in? I just got a question because so you guys are telling me that when they do a transcript or when they're transcribing, they're doing a court hearing, that it doesn't belong to the court, that it doesn't sit in a file, a sealed file, for that the courts can review, or the judge has to review, or prosecute. There's no transcript that is actually there to where they can pull it from the courts. It stays with the court reporter, or it stays with the transcriber.
I think what Ms. Jones said is that the court reporter is supposed to create produce that transcripts, and she's supposed to turn a copy of it over to the courts. But
Right.
in a lot of cases, that is not happening.
Right. That is correct. The court reporter is supposed to transcribe the court proceedings and then file a certified copy in the courts. And sometimes, and like in Miss Jenkins' case, it doesn't happen.
It didn't happen.
It didn't, yeah.
So is there some type of law there that's in there to where if certain procedures are not done appropriately, then is the case?
What?
Well, let's not. We don't want to get ahead of where we're going right now. What we want to do is I want to ask, and Christina, we'll get back to that question in a second. But I want to ask Miss Owens, what was your experience with transcripts? Did you have any challenges with getting yours?
Well, I did. I was incarcerated at the time at Washington State Prison, and I wanted to file an appeal. But in order to get my transcripts, they had to come up with $5,000 to pay for it. My husband had petitioned the court for me to get it as a pauper because I was incarcerated at the time. But because I had retirement from the school system, she said that we could use that to pay for it. And I was ineligible. But through situation with my husband where he refused to pay for it, she told me the only way I could get it as a pauper was that I would have to file charges against him because he kept my teacher retirement. And I made the decision not to do that because it was difficult enough, the fact that I was incarcerated, to file charges against my then husband would have possibly led to his incarceration. And we only had one son.
Gotcha.
So instead, my friends in church came up with the $5,000 to pay for the transcript. But initially, they could not find the transcriber.
So that seems to happen a lot. I saw you, Miss Jones, shaking your head about that $5,000. Tell us about that. Is that can they charge you that much for them? I guess so.
Well, they can charge the court reporter can charge for transcribing those transcripts. However, if a person is incarcerated, like I was, then the person incarcerated would have to petition the courts to file as a pauper, like I did. So I didn't have to pay for any of my transcripts.
Okay.
Well, she refused to allow me to do that.
The system did. Refused to allow you to do that. Wouldn't let you file that document unless you file something.
That judge.
Oh, the judge. Wow, isn't that that's important? And that's one of the things I would say. Again, I always have to say I'm not an attorney, but I would say if you're going to go out and get an attorney, you make sure that you tell that attorney, in addition to them working with you, or you working with them, or them taking your case, that you want to ensure that they also obtain your transcripts. Make sure that if there's going to be a cost in there, that cost is also included, because I had to go through the same thing. I was, with my incarceration, I had to fight the court, and I was incarcerated at the time, so my family had to keep going back and forth and going before the judge, and I mean, I think it was almost 9 months, almost a year before I even got my transcripts. So there's a reason why people don't want to give you your transcripts. And in Betty's case here, Miss Jenkins' case here, she was never able to obtain her transcripts, which did not allow her to file an appeal. And what happens with that, I mean, we can go deeper and deeper, is that the years run out for her to file a habeas. So guess what? They kind of get away with it. But what we have to realize is we have to file those habeas, as I believe before that 4 years is up. And I can ask one of these legal assistants or the law student on here, is that the case? Can you go on and file some type of appeal anyway without the transcripts, or you gotta have them? Or how does that work?
The way the process works, and the transcripts are needed. However, once a person receives the letter notification from the courts that they do not have those transcripts, then the next step would be to file a habeas. Again, I am not an attorney. However, I did follow those steps, and I proceeded to, I handled my court case, or the appeal process, the post-conviction, myself. And this was done after doing, tons of research. And I was able to proceed with the first level of the appeal process without an attorney.
Got you. Because sometimes, you got to think about what the system does. It will try to hold you or leave you stuck there. So you're thinking, I can't go any further because I don't have what I need. An attorney is telling you, Betty, probably in your case, that, well, you got to get me, I got to get the transcript.
The transcript.
Appeal. And all that time is eaten away. So
that's right.
So that is a problem. So I want us to keep moving because we do have a lot of information to cover. Let's now, I know, Kashina, you was asking something about the law. We just want to make sure that we can talk about what a code says or something like that, but we don't want to really get into trying to talk about law so much in the way that we are trying to give someone legal advice. We have to be very careful of that. And what was your question exactly? Because I want to make sure that we covered it if we can.
Well, I didn't want to go into, but I just wanted to know, was there a law that states that if the transcript is not available, or if they can find it in her case, then wouldn't the courts be responsible for that if they are responsible for making sure there is a transcript and they are doing they're recording the court hearings? Wouldn't they be responsible for getting that information?
Okay, Miss Jones or Miss Young, either one of you guys.
Was that a question even that was asked?
You are making sure that everybody's off mute so that we can all hear you.
The court hires the court reporter. A court reporter in the state of Georgia is a certified sworn position. The court reporter, according to the law code, Georgia Law Code 15-14-5, it is the duty of the court reporter. So it's the duty of the court reporter to transcribe the evidence and other proceedings of which he or she has taken notes as provided by the law. And the court reporter, that's part of their certification, is a requirement by law, is supposed to transcribe and file a certified copy of those transcripts with the courts. Again, there is a law code that states, that Georgia Law Code, that if the court reporter doesn't file those transcripts, then the next step, and an experienced lawyer in post convictions should know what the next step is, and that's to again follow the procedures that's laid out in law, and that's to file a habeas, because without the transcripts, a person, incarcerated person who's been incarcerated, they can't fight their case without those transcripts. Mm-hmm. So if those transcripts are intentionally lost, then that doesn't mean that person has to stay incarcerated. It means that person needs to take the next step. The next step is to let the courts know. You have to, let the courts know, file a habeas, that their rights, constitutional rights, have been violated.
Wow. And that's where they get us when we don't understand to file those things. Because in Betty's case, Miss Jenkins sent me a letter today, and I call her Betty because I know her, but Miss Jenkins sent me a copy of a letter today. And in that letter, you know, it said that it was in the news that this particular court reporter for Betty's case, number one, they couldn't find her, and number two, they found out that she was not certified, and
Exactly.
and that's shortly after they found that out, and it got out in the news. This judge, what's his last name? What's his name again, Betty? The judge,
Johnson, his name was Robert Johnson.
Robert Johnson.
Johnson.
Judge Robert Johnson. He resigned out of his position because there was the judicial board got involved. So
Yes.
he resigned.
Okay.
They couldn't find her, but all this time is Miss Jenkins is waiting and hoping to get something. So she didn't get that. When did you get that letter about the fact that they couldn't find that can't find your transcripts, Miss Jenkins? By this time is eating
That
up.
April 20th, 2021.
2020.
Oh, it was 2021.
Yeah. So they waited till all the time. See, that's why it's important that we know these things. That's why women woke within exist. That's why mass incarceration has a face exists, because we want you to know these things before they happen so that you can go and try to do something about those things. Because in Betty's case, you know, they probably knew already that they couldn't find this lady, and somebody had to know that she wasn't certified. And
That's right.
time, just go on, eat up. Because the same thing could have happened to me if I did not have some help and say, hey, listen, your time has been eaten up. You better go file your habeas. And so that's what I did. And thank God that I did that, because if I hadn't, it would have been the same thing. And they found so many things that was wrong in my case. And that's
Right.
why we have to, and that's why we're having these types of conversations. And that's why mass incarceration matters. But that doesn't mean that it's nothing that that Miss Jenkins can do, because I know there's someone out there.
Yes.
There's someone out there that right now your heart has been tugged at, saying, I know what I can do for Mr. Wayne Lamar Jones. Now, let me ask you this question, Miss Jenkins. How many times has Mr. Jones been reviewed for parole? And then tell me, what reasons has the Georgia Parole Board stated for denying his parole? And I know that he's just got a denial because I've seen it, but you know, I want you to read the letter. Now, first off, how many times has he come up for parole? Tell us that first.
As far as I can remember, it's just this is the second time.
It's the second time that he
Yeah.
knows about.
Because for years we've been, you know, we had it in our mind, okay, September the 24th, 2022 was when he was going to be going for a parole hearing. And September the 24th just passed, 22 just passed. So this letter from the parole board was written, was typed up February the 6th, 2023. And basically what it's saying is, dear Wayne Lamar Jones, the board has considered your case in accordance with board policy and denied parole. The main reason cited by the board after review of the totality of your case is insufficient amount of time served to date, given the nature of the circumstances of your offenses. And then it says, you are encouraged to continue in your rehabilitative efforts so you can be properly prepared to succeed in the event a future consideration result in your transition back into society. Your statutory parole eligibility status remains intact, and your case will be reconsidered by the board during February 2028 in accordance with Board Rule 475-3-05.
And I looked up that rule today for our audience. I looked it up, and I tell you, it's like it's a lot of information stuck in there. And what they're doing is they're saying, okay, because they can go back and say, okay, in 5 years we'll look at you again. But can any one of the legal assistant or the law student, any one of you, can you tell me, can you tell me, is there a checkbox or something that says, okay, Mr. Jones has met this, and he's done that, and he's done that, and he's done that, so that some qualification allows him to get out. What is the qualification that allows a person to be paroled? Because the letter you just read is just very vague. It doesn't say why. And then I know they try to say things are so secretive, and we're not mad at them. We're sending love to them, but we just want to understand why.
So it really depends on the court. It doesn't depend. It has nothing to do with what he submits. The court is the one that allows you to go on parole. So if they just don't want you to go, they won't let you go. You'll just be stuck in prison.
So it's not the parole board, it's the court.
Yes, the court. It's the judge. Or it could be,
Mm.
it's up to the judge, or it can be up to the prison themselves. I
Well,
know Florida works differently, so I'm not too sure about Georgia, but I know up here it's up to the judge and it's up to the actual the prison system.
Okay, well, yeah, jail is in Florida, so I know in Florida it's a little bit different. So for our audience, Ms. Jones, could you talk about what Georgia is like? What is that 475-3-05? How does it help people get parole? What's in there that's going to help Mr. Jones?
Okay, what is that? The parole? Hold on one second.
That is the
That
parole
code.
declaration.
Hold on. Here. That code that you read, is it parole ruling? Is that the ruling that they have?
It says the board rule 475-3-05.
Mm-hmm. And we can I've looked it up, but what I found in there, and that's why I was asking if anybody else seen anything any different than I have. There is nothing in there that gives a person a clear guideline on when they can be paroled. And then let me show you this. While Ms. Jones is kind of looking, I want to just share something with you guys about parole and what I discovered in some of my research earlier when looking at this case. So let me share my screen for a second, and I want to just share something with you here. And this is not something that I'm seeing. This is something that was on in Atlanta Journal Constitution. Can you see that? Can you look at and see what it's saying? It's saying that Barry Davis stood before a judge and admitted to a horrific crime, aggravated sodomy of a 6-year-old girl.
Oh.
Davis served 2 years in prison and 8 on probation, and his name was to live forever on an ignominious list, Georgia sex offender registry. So his name is going to be on this list, on the sex offenders list, but he's not in prison. But then suddenly last year, all was forgiven. Georgia's parole board granted Davis an unconditional pardon, recognizing his restored reputation and absolving, if not exactly exonerating him of his crime. The board did so without notifying Davis's victim, her family, or the prosecutor and judge who sent him to prison. And now Davis, like at least one other pardoned child molester from Georgia, says he no longer has to comply with the state's restrictions on sex offenders.
Mm-mm.
Now,
Wow.
I'm going and then let me just stop this share on here because you can read this, but I everything that I'm reading, you can check it out for yourself. Let me share this other piece with you because I want, for our audience sake, I want them to be able to see exactly what I'm talking about here. This is the other portion of that letter that was written in the Atlanta Journal Constitution. It says, Greg McConnell, who prosecuted Davis, twice asked the parole board to explain the pardon. Each time it refused. Finally, McConnell threatened to lodge a complaint with the governor. This is what the board told him. He said, go ahead. A board's attorney shot back, according to McConnell, we don't work for the governor. You are wasting your time. Davis's case underscores the near absolute autonomy exercised by the Georgia's Board of Parole and Pardons and Paroles, a government agency that is not accountable to legislators, judges, or even the governor who appoints its members. And guess what? Now this was, I think, was in 2019, something like that. But all the board members, they have a base salary of $135,000 a year. And they, of course, declined to be interviewed. So when you think about parole and you think about the letter that Mr. Jones received from the parole board, and you think about this person who was with a 6-year-old child, a girl, and how much time? 2 years in prison and 8 on probation, but yet now don't have to be on the registry. You tell me, and I'm not, like, again, we're not here to be angry. We're not throwing stones at the parole board or anybody. We're sending you some love because we want you to know that something is wrong with this picture. When Wayne Jones didn't do near anything that this person did. Somebody tell me, one of you people in law, please tell me, how is it possible that Mr. Wayne Lamar Jones is still in prison right now when you think about this case here?
Some court systems would see that as a not violent. And that could be a reason. Usually people get put on parole when they've already done like the least amount of their sentence. Then you're able to put in a parole packet. But since I'm not too sure about what happened to the other person. But sometimes they can look at it as not being as violent. Rather, the kidnapping, they could have saw it being a violent interaction or aggressive. So when they see that it's not violent and they look back on your other records and it doesn't show much, then you're more likely to get released than you would if you have a record.
So I understand what you're saying, but what I'm seeing here is aggravated sodomy of a 6-year-old girl.
That's as bad as it comes.
Okay, was that crime in Georgia?
It was in Georgia.
It was in Florida. Okay.
It was in Georgia. It was in Georgia.
It was in Georgia. And I believe that person, and this is, based off my recollection, that person, Davis, it was either he had ties with the community or somebody knew him. I forgot the history about that young man, Davis. However, I did read it previously that he had some type of connection with somebody, because according to Georgia's crime severity levels, Georgia has levels of crime that they assign different months that a person has to complete. And looking at the chart of the crime severity levels, the charges of aggravated sodomy, kidnapping, murder, rape, those charges are considered not parole eligible except on life sentence. And what that means is that eligible for parole consideration after 14 years or 30 years if the crime was committed after July 1st, 2006. So to answer your question, Anila, why is Mr. Jones still incarcerated? I can't answer, specifically why, but it's the guidelines for the parole. He falls under these particular guidelines, which says that he's not eligible for parole. And Ms. Jenkins, correct me if I'm wrong. The crime of kidnapping was committed prior to July 1st, 2006?
Yes.
Okay. So, however, let me say this. These are the parole guidelines. since you received that letter from the courts dated year 2021, and if Wayne or his attorney would have petitioned the courts and filed a habeas because his transcripts were lost, then it was a strong possibility Wayne could have been released from prison, because the courts and that's including the court reporter lost the official transcripts.
Mm. And I'm sure, as I said before, there's someone out there who can look at this case, take a look at this case, and work with Miss Jenkins to get her son free, because there was a lot of things that happened in this case that should not have happened. And
Right.
I do not believe that Mr. Jones should be still be in prison, already served 23 years and still serving time. And they're talking about 2028, when a person who sodomized a 6-year-old child can get out. And if that, and you know, and I understand that, you know, they got laws and they got rules. That just means then that we all need to be more conscious of these rules and these laws. And we need to make sure who's sitting on those boards and making these laws, because we need to make sure that what we need to get some of these laws changed, because some of them just not making any sense in that case right there. And I'll leave that there, but I'm talking to the audience right now that we need to get involved, because if they can make laws like this, that's not helping us, then we need to get involved and make sure that we help to shape those laws. But right now, what we're doing is we're sending the parole board some love, because Wayne Jones will be coming home. He will be coming home. This is what we believe. This is what we're standing on, and he will be coming home. We're not talking about in 2028. So now I want to ask you another question, Ms. Jenkins. When your son, we talk about him coming home. So when your son Wayne is released from captivity, what is his plans? What does he plan to do? What plans does he have when he comes home? Because he is coming home.
He's coming home. He's coming home.
We're not talking about no 4, 5, 10. We're talking about he has been released.
All right. Well, he's been working, well, not in the last 7 years, because the 7 years he was at Washington State Prison, he was in admin. So he did a lot of admin work, whatever they needed him to do. But he's a barber, and he wants to open his own barber shop. And of course, I'm gonna help him do that. And he's coming to Jacksonville, Florida, to my address.
Good.
He won't be in Georgia.
Good. Very good. Very, very, very good. Before we get ready to end this, because we only have an hour of time, but I just tell you something. When you think about his case, and as I mentioned before, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people just like Ms. Jenkins who's fighting for their children. Is there anything else, anyone else want to add to what we've just talked about today before we end this segment of the story of Wayne Lamar Jones?
Well, I just wanted to ask a question to Ms. Jenkins real quickly. During the time that this happened, was there any video? Did they provide any evidence as to what they saw? Was there a video provided for you to even view? Nothing.
I've never seen a video, and Wayne has never mentioned anything about they showed a video in court or anything, because he had 2 days of court. His public defender told him to plead guilty. Said because if you plead guilty, you're gonna get life with parole. Said because they're gonna see that you have a record, you're a recidivist. Okay. But as far as any other evidence, because I have a statement here that Wayne wrote years ago, and it was talking about, when they went to court, he said the judge told him they had 2 options, that either they have him ready in dress clothes in 15 minutes or this trial will be dismissed. And said that the public defender made sure that they got another inmate's clothes for him to put on to go to court, because he thought he was just going for a hearing, and he was going to be sentenced.
Wow.
That's what he found out. And he said that he was just only doing what the public defender told him to do or say,
And
you
there
know.
you have it, talking about, so therefore the public defender told him to take a plea, because if he didn't take that plea, he was going to get life in prison.
Yes.
And what happened anyway? He got life in prison, didn't he? With the
Yes, he did.
possibility of parole. Now, and I just want to say this, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but I have common sense. So it sounds to me like the public defender is saying, well, you need to take this plea. And so you get in front of the judge. So the judge is saying, well, wait a minute, this charge doesn't meet the standards for kidnapping. But now, in the meantime, the public defender has already got Mr. Jones to sign off this plea. So the judge is going to go along with the district attorney or the public defender. They're not going to try to fight this issue, because it's just easy for them to go on and put this person on in jail because they've already signed a plea. Does that sound about what a sound like what normally happens in court? To anybody else want to chime in on this just for a second, because what you just said right there is so important, Ms. Jenkins, is that people don't understand. They try to get me to take a plea. Man, did they try? They tried, told me if I didn't take a plea, they tried. I refused to take a plea because I didn't feel like I'd done anything wrong to take that plea. And even if you do, I think you probably have a better chance of going through court than taking that plea. Because let me ask you this question, Ms. Jones. Say the attorney, pro bono, whatever, public defender, whatever, says, okay, well, you only do 3 years. If you just take this plea, you do 3 years. Does the judge have to go along with that 3 years, or can the judge say something different?
The judge can say something different. The judge doesn't have to accept the plea agreement between the two parties.
Even if you get it in writing, suppose you get the public defender to put it in writing, does the judge have to go along with it then?
No, the judge doesn't have to go along with the plea. The judge can object to the plea and he can change it. He or she can change the plea or deny the plea.
So therefore, if you take a plea, you still not any better off than you was just going through the courts. I mean, you probably better off going through the court.
Better off going through the courts, yeah.
Miss Owens, did you have something you want to add to that? I saw you kind of, you was shaking.
Yeah, I was just doing a little reminiscing because while I didn't have a public defender, although he worked as a public defender, he cost me $7,500. I don't remember him pressuring me to take a plea, but I do remember the judge pressuring me because they brought me in her office and she told me that if I took a plea, that she would sentence me to probation. But I couldn't take a plea for something that I didn't do. So that's when she had my pastor to come talk with me and try to urge me to take a plea because she felt like I was just too uppity.
Oh, wow.
So then she sentenced me to a total of 20 years.
Same thing happened to me. I was in court. They took me in the first I was in this big, where everybody was at, and then they were trying to, get me to take a plea. They had little meetings and asked me to take a plea, and I wouldn't take it. So then they finally took me over to the judge's chambers with just the district attorney and all those people, and they said, well, and the judge told me, he said, well, they told me they asked you to take a plea, and I tell you, if you don't take this plea, then if they tell me they want to give you, they want to recommend you do 20 years, that's what you're gonna do. And guess what they gave me? 20 years to the door. But guess what? Because of God, because of my
God,
belief, I'm telling you. And that's what I'm
Amen.
right today.
Yeah.
So Wayne Jones will be free.
Yes.
All right.
Amen.
There you have it. There you have it. In summary, Mr. Jones and his family could not file a proper appeal because his transcripts were not made available by the court. And by the way, this same court said that they did not know how to locate the transcriber. Moreover, Mr. Jones was sentenced to life for an alleged crime, which the judge allegedly said did not meet the standards for the said crime. Wayne Lamar Jones is serving time in prison and has been there for 23 years. But today, as Women Woke Within consciously unites, we see him released and we see him free. And if you are interested in assisting Betty Jenkins with getting her son's release, please contact our office at womenwokewithin@gmail.com. We are Women Woke Within, reminding you that mass incarceration has a face
Has a face.
and a name.
A name.